Hi, everybody. Welcome to Hi-Fi Happy Hour. I am Emiko, aka that Hi-Fi girl. What's everybody drinking tonight? I gotta know. It's Friday. It's been a long week, y'all. Long week. And you can see I have a tall flute here. Cheers to everybody. As you know, this is a safe space for hi-fi, audio, music, all things audiophile, where we talk about the community, we talk about the industry. We don't do a ton of tech. We do sometimes, but not always. I see some folks are drinking IPA. Okay, hello. Thank you for joining us. So y'all know the rules, right? No harassment, no sexual harassment, which really isn't harassment, but I can't believe I have to specify that. No bullying, no trolling. There are no stupid questions. There are a lot of people here who are just beginning their journeys, and they will ask things truly not to be funny or to be condescending. They're literally asking questions like, what is jitter? What would you use a USB cable that's that long for? So on and so forth. And it's important that we provide them with the answers and the education and the encouragement so that they can get more into the hobby. So anyway, with that said, I want to bring on my very special guest tonight, who, first of all, I have to thank my buddy Gzilla, Giles McCoy, because he, from Home Theater Fanatics, he had my guest and me and Brian Mitchell from Acoustics on this stream, and that's how I met our illustrious guest this evening. So Adam Sohmer, who is the president of Sohmer Associates, LLC. They are a Brooklyn-based PR and marketing firm that specializes in the audio, high-end audio, hi-fi market, for lack of a better term. Although what Adam does is so specialized and so personal. He represents some of the largest brands in the entire world, much less in the United States. He's got a really, really cool perspective on how things work from the inside out, from the ground up, when it comes to everything from design, R&D, development, technology, all the way to sales, marketing, public relations, and really communications and connectivity, which is really important. He and I were able to connect on Giles's show originally, so huge shout out to Home Theater Fanatics for facilitating that. And without further ado, fellow New Yorker, Adam Sohmer. Hi.
Hey, Miko, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for being on Hi-Fi Happy Hour.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Happy to be here. I have, like I said, I have my drink of choice, coffee.
Well, cheers to your coffee, sir.
And cheers. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So, you're busy. I don't even know where to start. Like, you're busy, and you have been, right? I know exactly. You have been, oh, we already have a compliment for you. That goatee is sharp, is a comment that just came in. So that's nice. That's a nice compliment to get top of the hour. It's great. Starting off strong. You've been at this for quite a while, which again is difficult because you're only 25. So I would love to hear, and I think like a lot of times you get asked about brands, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into, why is marketing important? What's the messaging? How can we change things as an industry, as a community? But I'd really like to know how you started and what makes your audiophile heart excited.
Well, I guess, one part, if you look at the just interest in audio and music side, it's really since birth. I always had a phonograph as far back as I can remember. My parents had one of those old hi-fi consoles that you'd find, pictures from 60s magazines. Right. It was a blast. And for whatever reason, I just got hooked on records. Always loved music, records specifically. Music, very exciting part of my life, still is for that matter. So growing up, this was always a priority. It was always kind of like my sports too, where I followed the market, certainly music, but then I was also kind of interested in the gear as much as a kid could be. And as I got older and a little more mobile, I would find a couple hi-fi shops, I grew up in Queens, New York, and there was a place in Fresh Meadows where a guy would let me show up with my copy of Steely Dan Asia under my arm. And and he would play it on good systems, knowing that this kid was not walking out with a $5,000 system, but he could see the interest and was happy to foster that. And I think that's a very important part of our industry, is where we get to connect with each other, because it's entertainment. When you boil it down, music is a critical part of my life. I consider it right up there with food and air, but it is entertainment. And the passion that people have around that, I think, it's sort of built from a very early age. So for me, that's where it was. And I thought I'd be going into radio when I was in school. I had, radio shows. I did voiceovers for small stations. And then when I got out, got a job at a small radio station on Long Island, WGLIAM. And I can say it because it's no longer there, so nobody will give me a hard time about it. But I was meeting people, great people, very talented, in their late 30s, early 40s, still living with their parents. I thought, maybe this isn't the career for me. And start feeling my way around. And I think there's a lot to be said for exploring your interests. If you feel like, okay, I need to make a change, go with it. So I think there was a period where for about 2 years, I managed a small record store in Little Neck, Queens, while deciding what was next. And hooked up in a job at an ad agency and then a public relations firm that I got to know a bit. And they had Sony Electronics Consumer. Hired me when I had nowhere near enough experience to handle that level of an account, but that didn't stop them. I guess they saw the interest in me. Plus, I wasn't particularly expensive at the time. So it was a winning combination, as they say. And it was great because I learned so much in a very short period of time, and worked at a few of the larger PR firms, working on accounts like Sony, Panasonic, Techniques, Fujifilm, Blank Audio, and Videotape, which at the time was a very big thing, magnetic products. And just sort of continued along that path as I honed my specialty in this area. So on one hand, learning public relations and marketing for the various eras, you could say, because communications changes on a daily basis. Right. And then the other side of it is sort of like following my interest, following my passion. So even though I worked on other accounts as well, the audio is what I always came back to, and my clients could always see that, and developed a lot of very strong relationships that persist to this day. I'm very happy to say that. And I opened my own business in April of 2003, which means that this month is my 19th anniversary in business.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
That's very cool. That's very cool. One of the things that I think is so critical that the industry at large tends to, I don't know if we overlook it, but we certainly don't spend nearly enough time on it, which I think is one contributing factor to why we're always on the hunt to try to grow everything, is nobody can seem to answer this for me. Why do you think hi-fi and audio is important? Because when you're selling something, right? We're both in marketing. There's to sell it for flash and for fun, ease of use, price. There's all of these reasons. There are all these angles. But what's missing in the center of the angles is the purpose. And so I would like to ask you, what makes hi-fi important?
Well, I guess speaking mostly for me, but also for, having had this conversation over the years, I think the gateway is always music, a love, a passion for music. So whether you're a musician or you're like me and you consider yourself the ultimate fan, it was just always listening, always being glued to the radio, buying records, and you can't help but over time noticing differences. So whether or not those differences will actually make a difference to you, that's, I think, the deciding factor. So for me, it was being interested in music, and then the gear itself. Like I said, I've always had a fascination with turntables. I don't collect them like some of my friends in the business, but I do have two at home, and there's just something about the experience, of playing a record that I think there's something magical about it if you're the person who's open to it. And that's where I think the love comes. Now, how deep you go is really a matter of different factors. You may just love it enough to want a good system at home, or just even not even a full system, but something really basic.
Mhm.
Or you might be in the other direction and either money's no object or just focus is no object. Like this is what you live and breathe. And,
Mhm.
so, but I think no matter what, it has to start with a real love and appreciation of recorded music.
Do you think that over the years, the way that hi-fi and audio is marketed, not so much the methodology, meaning obviously social media or print or things like that, but do you feel like the cultural messaging has changed? And if so, how?
Oh, it used to be something, well, there were pluses and minuses. If you go back, before my time, if you look at ads from the 50s and 60s and typically men's magazines or
Mhm.
business magazines or business
Right.
newspapers,
Sure.
it was sort of a myopic focus, if you will.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
on the plus side, they were out in that consumer media. So it wasn't all just speaking among ourselves.
Right.
Jump to the current era, audiophiles find themselves in our, amongst ourselves. And then you have the other side where people still love music and they have quote unquote solutions, like
Mhm.
you'll hear the term streaming solution very often,
Right.
which can be anything. It could be a full-fledged streamer. It could be just, going from your phone to a little Bose SoundLink Mini,
Right. Right.
which by the way, I love. Bose is not a client and I think it's a great product. Uh, but it's one of those things where you decide what level matters to you, and for
Mhm.
me it's an interest in having something better. It's an important part of my world. So I work at home like millions of other people. If you go into my living room, there's a 5.1 system set up.
Mhm.
That's where I do most of my listening. I like listening on speakers as much as I enjoy really high end headphones and like having the music around me at all times.
Sure.
There's still nothing like being able to sit down and listen to an album. But I also know that's me, and I don't assume that of the other people in my world. And I love to share the passion for it, but I try to meet people on their own level
Mhm.
with the music they like and the types of things they're interested in. And
Right.
never assume, never try to be, the all knowing, all seeing, let me tell you what's good for you and what's
Right.
wrong with what you have right now.
Sure. Sure. Right.
Because that's a great way to turn people off to this world or really any interest at all.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you, because you mentioned Bose, and we I know that somewhere in audiophilia in that universe, somebody went, "Ugh, there is a disturbance in the
Uh,
force." Um, why? And I think like you and I are really plugged into marketing things um in a positive way, right? Like pushing positive messaging and pushing as much information to allow the end user or prospective customer to make the best decisions possible. Why do you think some why do you think some companies have gotten a I mean, really an undeserved bum rap, number one? And why do you think it's stuck, and why is it propagated and continues on this way?
it's a good question. I mean, using Bose as the example, if you mention that name in audiophile circles, very often people get angry,
Yeah,
convulse, have to be
right.
taken to the ER. It's
Right.
not pretty.
Right,
And
yes.
but meanwhile, someone I'm close with has that the SoundLink Mini that I spoke about.
Mhm.
Love streaming music to it. It's great. It has a little bass in there and it brings music into the home. That's all this person wants,
Right.
that music. So it's great. And when they started marketing, and I think, I think back to the Bose Wave Radio,
Mhm.
they
Yeah, my dad
advertised
had one.
that in the Journal and the New York Times Magazine, if I'm not mistaken. They really weren't pushing hard in audiophile circles for something like that because it wasn't an audiophile product.
Mhm.
It's a great sounding product. It was
Sure.
one of the best of its kind at the time, and it made a mint for the company. And I think that bothers a lot of people that it
Hmm.
wasn't considered like a true high end piece of audio.
Hmm.
And the fact that they went over the heads of our world and spoke to the masses. And it's a great, there's the word again, solution. But
Right.
it really is something like that for the masses. And I think those types of products now are a little more common than they were at the time of the Bose Wave
Yeah.
Radio, where that
Right.
really owned a unique position in that space.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I remember my dad got one, and that was like our thing for a while.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned the radio station in Long Island, because my uncle he's passed now, but he used to own WNWK Sports Radio in Manhattan, and he got inducted into the National Jewish Broadcasters Hall of Fame or something like that. And he was always talking about how important sound is and how you have to have proper sound, and even in your home you have to and my dad came home with that, and we all said, wow, this is really great. And then one day my father came home and said, hold on, there's this really cool company that makes a thing like this, but they have a flat phone, and now we're going to go to this. And I said, what's it called? And he went, Bang & Olufsen. And
Hmm.
off we went. And, as a kid, I was like, this is the coolest story ever in the history of time. And they let me sit in the chairs and use the phones and all the stuff. And the fact that I could try stuff, right? And I wasn't being told, don't touch that. That's for adults. Don't ask questions about that. You don't understand. And they were very just low key about everything. Do you feel like the audio industry, the high-end audio industry specifically, have we gravitated away from that sort of come on in and touch it and try it, and now it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's an audition, sit in the chair and I will play some music for you type of a situation?
Excuse me. That's what I was drinking too much coffee at night. Oh, certainly. I think that's a very big problem with it.
Mm.
For one thing, and I can speak mainly for the New York market, but I know it's the same around the country. There are far fewer of these places to go hear music,
Sure.
to
Right.
actually test, not even test, just walk in and say, hey, what's this all about?
Right.
And when you do, there's an expectation that you at least have a general idea of what you're looking for.
Hmm.
So, otherwise you could be viewed as a tire kicker. And again,
Right.
here in New York anyway, not a lot. Some of the old guard dealers that are still in business are now by appointment only. So
Mm.
once you go that route, it's game over for bringing in new people.
Sure.
I'll go because I know the market and I know the gear and I'll check it out. But if it's
Right.
by appointment only, it doesn't make me feel welcome if I'm a novice. And I think
Sure.
we need more
Right.
venues where, fine, if more people are buying differently and, online counts for a certain percentage of sales, great. What
Right.
else are we doing to get people out there to listen to it beyond the events where, again, we talk to the people who are already converted? What are we doing to reach others? Because that part, yeah, really has changed a lot.
Well, let's talk about expansive messaging, because one of the things, I wanted to ask this before, but I wanted you to tell the story of how you got into it. And you mentioned the console and how it was marketed in a lot of men's business journal magazines, things like that. The thing that always got me, the horribly sexist advertising aside of the lady in the pencil, skirt and bending over serving drinks to her husband while he's putting a record on and enjoying his life. I thought to myself, well, hold on a minute. In the 50s and somewhat in the 60s, right? Like, women, historically, women stayed home. They raised the children, they cooked the meals, they were homebodies. Wouldn't you want to market this to women? Because they're the
Thank you.
ones that are using it 24/7?
Hmm.
Where is that conversation? I'm curious. Like, historically, I'm very curious about this, because it's like a group of people said, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make this incredibly heavy, cumbersome thing. You're gonna go spend a lot of money in it, and you're gonna put it in your house, but you work in an office that's hours away. You go out with
Hmm.
the boys after work, have steak and cigars and cognac, then you come home, you're too tired to listen to whatever, except on the weekends when your kids are there bothering you. Why would you market to that guy and not market to the woman who's at home who can enjoy it all day long.
It was sold traditionally as a guy's toy, as a guy's system, and the same way they sold cars and sporting goods. It was for the men. And anytime they would depict women in a lot of those ads listening to music, it was with a tabletop radio somewhere in the
Right.
kitchen while she was doing her job.
Chores.
Uh,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Housework. Yes. No,
and
I
I
understand that.
never,
I think
excuse me?
the question is like, why was the conversation? I understand how it was marketed. I guess my question is, why did anybody in that boardroom go, women are at home 12 hours a day. We should probably market to them because they also, as much as the men make the money, the women did, and probably still do, control a lot of how the spending happened because they were in charge of the household budget. So wouldn't it
Yeah.
stand to, I mean, logically in my mind, and forgive me because I'm just a woman, but wouldn't it make sense to market, if not a console system, but like a lady system or something very antiquated in 50s that would have been appropriate then? I'm quite serious
Oh,
because
yeah.
I've never had this conversation with anybody. I've always been curious, and I'm not going to ask a Facebook group because you know what
Oh,
happens
God,
there.
don't. No, no, no. You have to send
So
them
I
a
figured I'd
photo
ask
afterward.
you.
No, I think, well, that's always baffled me, to be honest with you, is just how they decided, okay, well, I mean, it was the culture at the time, I get it, but it was like, all right, this is, for the men. Now, why they wouldn't do that? It's a good question. I think it was just positioned as, well, no, the women are the one that we sell the appliances to. So, it was perfectly acceptable to feature a woman in an ad for a vacuum cleaner, but not
Right,
for
right.
the audio or for that. Well, televisions were more sold as a family thing. You might see people like
Sure.
mom, dad, and the kids sitting around it. For the most
Right.
part, audio and to a much bigger extent, cars were all
Yeah,
about
yeah.
guys.
Well, right.
And I always felt like they were missing a bet on both ends. And frankly, in audio, we still are.
I forgive me for saying this. Just this is an idea I've had in my head for a while. It's never going to come to fruition. God, I hope it does not come to fruition. But if I had a time machine and I could go back to the Mad Men era, I would bust down that door and say, you're doing this all wrong. You're going to set audio on a course where it's going to be this very gender exclusive, very insular, tiny myopic thing where it's going to
Mhm.
implode on itself. What you need to do, y'all have created this console, and in the console, there's like some of them had like a bar, right, built into the side of it, and like really crazy, really cool stuff. But you know what it also looks like? A vanity. Stick a mirror on there and put a makeup tray on there and a lingerie drawer. And then your lovely wife can doll herself up and get ready for you to come home and spin her favorite records. Boom, there's your sales. Because cosmetics were at the pinnacle, right? And corrective shapewear and all that stuff. Like, why would you not
Yeah.
put the two together? Again, something I
Well,
will not be saying on Facebook.
no, no, no. Yeah, good. Life is too short.
Yeah.
But when it comes, if you could magically do that, I would say instead of going to the ad agency,
Mhm.
you want to go to the manufacturers and the ones doing
Fair enough.
that research and ask them why they're leaving money on the table. I mean, it's dollars
Yeah.
and cents to me. You have a
Absolutely.
whole category of customers that you're ignoring. And fine, if you look at it in the context of an era, you want to make the female version of it, if if you want to look at it that way,
Right.
but do it. I mean, everybody loves music and it keeps coming back to that. Why are you ignoring them
Right.
and not creating the products and then building a marketing campaign around that?
Right. Yeah,
And
that always freaked me out that they missed this whole, I don't know, this whole segment of the population, that because then when TVs came out and they did market to families, but they also said, "Oh, these soap operas will keep you entertained while you're doing your chores." But the running joke was, at least my grandparents' running joke was, grandma didn't do her housework because she was too busy sitting in front of the TV
yeah,
watching soaps. Okay, but if the album was spinning, you could be doing other stuff because it's not visual, right? Maybe I'm too
right.
cerebral for it, and I okay, fair enough. But that's really where I went with this, and I thought this is bizarre that they're not capitalizing on. I mean, there's a lot there.
But a lot of those stereotypes to me are baffling. You know, if you look
Yeah.
back on it, go back 50, 60 years, it's just like what a like a narrow way to look at your market, whatever that market is, even going beyond audio. It's just,
Right.
do you really want a gender stereotype, to your detriment?
Of
And that's
course.
just like
Right.
looking at it from a pure business point of view. Then you have the societal, the cultural side of it, which is really, come on.
Hmm.
Uh, why? And the fact that even now, I mean, granted, it's not as bad as it was, or
Hmm.
stereotyped as it was then. We still have that challenge, at least in audio, the way it's
Right.
marketed.
Right.
It's not marketed to as wide an audience as it should be. And your dog
Sorry.
agrees, really.
Apparently, my apologies.
Oh
Somebody
no, that's
is,
you're kidding.
I mean, she's doing her job, to be fair.
I,
She's
I like
doing her
having
job.
animals around. It's good. My
Sorry,
cats are just a little
everybody.
more quiet. It's okay.
Victoria, Victoria,
Victoria has something to say.
Victoria, come here. Come here. Or stay there and be quiet. Either way, just calm down. We have a comment I'd like to read out from Audio Systems Specialist, because this is something that I'd like to delve into. They write, there are a lot of women at the head of hi-fi, and I bet you there are 70% of the manufacturing process handmade by women, hand assembled. Now, this is a very interesting thing, because my question to that would be, while yes, there's not nearly as many as I think he thinks, but because because I know the ones that are in my
Yeah.
position, so I'm aware.
Can
There's only
count them.
enough of us to like make a calendar. There's only like 12 of us or whatever.
Yeah.
But the manufacturing process, I would be curious about, because that's an unspoken thing that's deeply concerning to me. Because if it's something that's made in a factory, and there are companies that are considering, oh, but these are made by women, but it's factory wages and it's some sort of assembly line, that's not really something that you want to spotlight, I don't think.
No, no. I mean, as critical as they are to the process, but yeah, exactly. That's the assembly line. I think, you have to look at the front office if you really want
Right.
to see where the impact is being made.
Yes.
So are they helping to lead the brands? In some
Right.
cases, yes. I mean, I can
Right.
think, people off the
Sure.
top of my head, like, Evian Manley, Angela Cardis.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who are not just, and I hate to bring it up this way, like, great women in audio. They're just brilliant business people with a strong passion for audio. That's it,
But
and
that's what
there
men
it
are
shouldn't be
too,
such a
right?
barrier.
But
Excuse me?
that's what men are as well. They're just strong business people with great ideas who happen to be really into audio.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But
So they're
men
the
have that
same.
leg up because the door was open already.
Yeah, no, I
And
understand.
that's the thing.
Right.
Nobody's noticing
Good
when a
point.
guy
Right.
takes over, a brand like that.
Right.
But there
Right.
will be, they'll take notice though if there's, a female CEO.
This is
Those
this is
first
the
articles will make note.
right. And this is the thing that now we've got, like Manly Labs, Estalon, Totem, Estalon. Well, the fact that Estalon has been named 2 out of 4 tells me that there are still too few in the
Oh,
pool,
sure.
right? Because most other brands that we name will have men at the helm. And for me, this isn't a conversation about gender. It's just more like it's important that we understand, because it's not about necessarily giving jobs to women or whatever. It's about opening up the industry in a way that welcomes all people, all genders, all identifying factors, all levels, all budgets, right? All genres of music, whoever wants to have a better listening experience. And so I think for me, that leads me very nicely into the next question, which is
Yeah,
um,
what's that?
why is it? I'm just going to ask you, you're going to be the oracle of Hi-Fi Happy Hour tonight, Adam.
Oh, okay,
Why
yeah.
is it that there are, let's face it, you and I both know this, there are quite a few audio brands, manufacturers or designers, that they're not capitalizing on social media. They're sort of missing the whole digital media boat. Why is that?
I think, well, without looking at the specific brands, in many cases, and this is just me talking. I think they're very used to, some companies in general, very used to the way we do things, whatever that way
Mm,
is.
sure.
It's something that's tried and true. It always works. This is the way we position an ad. Don't break it. This is just it. Just leave it alone. And it's a lot easier this way. I think the ones that really shake things up, the ones that are truly disruptive, get noticed,
Hmm.
but they tend to be fewer, and that's why it's they tend to the ones that are just kind of stayed and doing the things that we always did.
Right.
There's a comfort level, and maybe that's your baseline, that you can't not do that, but start exploring different areas. I mean, for example, the one that I come back to,
Hmm.
Sennheiser, never one of my clients, but I've always loved the company and the products.
Yep.
In New York a few years ago, they went to the Oculus at the World
Hmm.
Trade Center, and the Oculus is like the big
Right.
shopping mall, lack of a better term. That's a subway hub down by
Right.
Wall Street. Thousands of people go through there like every minute, at least it feels like it.
Yeah.
They set up a pop up, and you could go
Right. Yeah.
try out headphones, buy a headphone, don't buy a headphone, whatever. And it was
Right.
great. I mean, it was there for a limited period, and they got amazing traffic, and they did extremely well with it.
They also
I think
had
we need more of
social
that.
media, like they had hashtags and social media stuff.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing, like, for a week, everything on my feed was hashtag Sennheiser, hashtag Oculus, hashtag downtown, right? Like all Battery Park, like all these things. And I was just like, okay, what's happening? Like, did they launch a new? No, they just showed up,
Right. And
just,
and that's where you had a
for the fun of it.
forward-thinking brand, and
Right.
whoever came up with that idea, whether they were inside the company or not, it was driven by the brand, by the company.
Right.
And then
Right.
you have the marketing team inside and outside who is handling social media, any announcements, any
Right.
special events around it, because it's a great public space. You have like a terrific venue that can keep on giving so long as you capitalize on it.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
think that's where a lot of them drop the ball on social media, is because they're just not thinking about it, frankly. There's some that are. The bigger ones will hire, whether it's a marketing firm or have people in house,
Right.
and they'll stay on top of it. But I don't
Yeah.
think there are that many who really treat it as a big priority. It's still sort of, if not the old guard,
Mm.
just moving in the right direction. But it
Hmm.
it's definitely takes work. It's a Sisyphean effort.
Right. Right. I want to read out another comment, not to put you in the hot seat, but
Okay.
I would
It's
be
okay. I
very
don't see the
curious.
comments on my screen, on this
Right.
platform. So just lay it on me.
um, so audio system specialist is asking another question, which I love, and I'm so glad that he asked this question. And thank you for posing this. And I'm glad it's coming from him and not from me, because I wonder this daily. He writes, "What I have a serious issue with are marketing firms using women models to advertise for hi-fi. I still see sexy dressed women next to speakers. Like, why?"
Really?
Oh
I
yeah, I see them
honestly,
too.
though, I see some of that out there. Certainly the companies I work with don't.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and on a personal level, I don't think that we should be going that route anymore. If
Yeah.
you want to bring in people, like show women, like just show different people with the
Right.
product,
Sure.
interacting with your product. That's great.
Yes. Right.
But to your point, what you said earlier, you don't want to have, the housewife in high heels and pearls, you
Right.
know, representing, the gender. It's not like that. But
Yeah.
you still hear terms thrown around from the old days, like wife acceptance factor.
That one really gets to me because everybody says that to me and they assume that my system belongs to my partner, and then they find out I'm the wife, and the blood just they literally, it's like their brain short
Yeah.
circuits. They go, I don't know what to say, you know. Yeah, wife acceptance factor is a big, and it's interesting because that there's truth to it, but there's the remedy is within the complaint. My
Yeah.
wife has to approve this. Yeah. You know why? Because you're married and it's a partnership. And if you would market to all people, you wouldn't have wife acceptance factor. We would have people acceptance factor. Like, hey, it's a cool, and that equates to, hey, I like that system. It's cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, 50 years ago, there were hi-fi shops to be sure, but you
Right.
also had audio equipment sold in furniture stores.
Yes.
And that was a big part, not just those consoles either, but like, something that we would recognize as separates now, maybe
Right.
not an extensive selection and something that was very consumer friendly for the time,
Right.
but it was out there. It wasn't such an oddity. Now it's something, again, that we just keep among ourselves.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's necessarily a wife acceptance factor or a husband, whatever. It's just people don't accept it
Right.
because they don't come across it. So it's that specialty thing. So in my circle, I have friends and family who see me as that, like that audio person, the audio guy, and they'll ask me for recommendations. I want a turntable. Great.
Right.
What's your budget? And we'll go through. It's like, oh, I don't want anything like that. It's just like, well, and then they end up getting a Crossley. And don't forget, friends don't let friends buy Crossley.
That's not fair. I just had this conversation with somebody last night about Crossley and
Uh-huh.
Victrola, as a matter of
Yeah,
fact.
you see, you probably shouldn't diss Crossley this way, but it's just, my feeling is no matter what the budget is, there's sort of anything you can find something that's a little better,
Right.
but the audio guy in your life might be the one saying no, 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 because it's not, $5,000 and you call that a
Right.
speaker.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
that's the death knell for any industry, or at least it's going to keep you in your box.
Well, for me, like, I have a Crossley story that I will share because it's because you brought it up. So I, when we were doing our Capitol Studios event with the show, I had to go get I had to get a turntable, a record player, right? And just a cheap one because we had a bunch of records that we had gotten from the flea market or whatever. We just needed to make sure that they weren't scratched to bits. Like, it was just one of those things, right? So I ran with our producer to Target, grabbed the first thing I saw, which was one of those Crosley Voyager suitcase players. I was like, oh, nobody take my picture. Just whatever, right? Paid the $69.95, hung my head in shame, covered it with a sweatshirt, walked out as quickly as I could. But got it home, put it on. It sounded, let me rephrase. If I didn't have a point of reference that I have, I would think it sounded fine. And I would be super into vinyl because that is a great entry point into the hobby. I obviously did not keep the turntable. I did not return the turntable. We were not able to do so. So a girlfriend of mine came over and she saw my Eggleston Works and freaked out. Oh my God, they're purple. She said, I didn't know they made speakers in colors. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, red, black, white. That's usually
Right.
what you get at the end. And she goes, they make purple. I said, no, they don't make purple. They made me purple. And she said, well, what is it? What does it sound like? What is, so we played some records. She says, man, I had to get into vinyl. And I said, why? And she goes, because it's cool. So for that Christmas, I gave her, I said, I know what I'm going to do with the Crossley that's sitting in the corner. I wrapped it up. I gave it to her and I bought her a pair of very, entry level, by our definition, edifier speakers, Bluetooth speakers, which sounded great for her beginner system. And now she's all into vinyl. She's looking at techniques. She's looking at upgrading. And it's so interesting because we joke, I think among us, we joke about brands, we joke about price points, we joke about entry points, things like this. But when I got to see firsthand someone who, audiophile, I don't even know what that is, right? And now she's talking about, oh, have you seen the techniques this and have you this? And I'm going to go audition this. And, she's still at the Magnolia phase, but that's okay. Because before she was at the Crossley phase, right? And so next she's at the Magnolia phase. Then we're going to bring her to the show in Long Beach. And then we're going to introduce her to a couple of dealers that are in the area. I'm going to take her to Audio Element and to Sunny Components that are nearby our, where I live, and let her really experience it. Because that was the entry point for her.
Oh, I mean, that's great.
She hasn't stayed faithful to Crossley very, very long. I'll give you that. It was sort of like get in, get out.
Very few do.
But if it gets you in,
yeah,
that's what counts. And that's a beautiful, right? That's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Like,
It really is, and look, I shouldn't, just use them as the example. When I think of that type of product, it has less to do with the sound, quite frankly, than it does with the way it plays the record. How the platter
Yeah,
is not as large as the album itself, which is not good for records. So I'm
sure.
coming at it from that point of view,
Yeah, of course.
and there are kits that are sold that's like, I think Audio Technica, please don't hold me to it if I'm wrong, but sort of
Mm,
like a package where you can get the box instead of spending $80 for the close and play, you can
hmm
spend up to 150 and get something self-contained that is a turntable with two
Two
speakers,
speakers, yeah,
a
right,
properly built turntable where you can even change the stylus when it's time. That's an
right.
entry level system
So
that actually, that sounds good.
Crosley does offer those. So does Victrola, as a matter of fact.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I was looking at. And then last night I was on with Brian Mitchell of Acoustics. We were talking about Crosley, and we went to the Crosley website. Excuse me. And Crosley has, this is something that I made in my notes that I want to talk to you about, which is Crosley has an artist program where they, for lack of a better term, endorse, right? It's an endorsement program. And what you get is you get a Crosley record player, like a close and play, and they feature you on their social media and all this stuff. I mean, it's a cute little thing. It's primarily for country and Americana artists. Like, there's not a lot of like, heavy prog or jazz or stuff like that. But it's interesting because what it's done is it's opened up a whole new generation of people into the vinyl
Mhm.
lifestyle. And it's made people aware, hey, I'm not going to buy my friend's music on a download, or I'm not going to spend, right, here comes my streaming down with streaming pitch, 0.00013 cents for streaming digital media. Oh, they're a Crosley artist. Cool. I'm going to go support them by buying their vinyl. And there is Blink right there. And so, for as much as I think we do tend to sort of go, Crosley, man, they're in their lane and they know what's up because they're bringing in artists and they're educating and they're inspiring people. And I
Oh,
think it's amazing.
look, I mean, they're inspiring people and they're a great marketing company too. The
Yeah,
name is out there. The fact that we would even have this conversation is
right.
proof of it. The one thing
Absolutely.
that really impressed me most about them was several years ago, Jack White, Third Man
hmm
Records, as big of a high-end vinyl evangelist as you're going to find,
Yeah,
had a program going with Crossley. They did a
right.
Third Man Crossley product. That was the
Yep.
basic Crossley product. It was at Rough Trade Records here in New York
hmm
and probably sold on the various websites. It did pretty well, and that's really what it was all about. I do think vinyl is objectively appealing. There's no vinyl
Yeah.
resurgence anymore. There is a
No,
vinyl
it's
market
here.
that tends
Yes.
to grow. It ebbs and
hmm
flows depending on manufacturing at the time, but there's no novelty to it anymore. Unlike, let's say, cassettes that rolled out for a bit last year because I think we were all bored with the pandemic. Um,
Yeah.
but
Cassettes, sourdough,
and
and that Korean coffee. Yes.
right,
Basically.
exactly, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I got tired of the bread maker.
Right.
But I think with vinyl, there is something about the experience of playing it. Now, I'm an enthusiast, to put it mildly, so I am very prejudiced in this area. But
hmm
there is something about the experience, that tactile experience of holding something, putting it on, and it sounds good. And I've had
Yeah.
people in our industry argue, well, no, high resolution downloads are better because of these reasons, and they sound great. I'm a big fan. I stream Kubas all the time,
Sure. I
so
was
it's
doing
a
it right
big way I
before.
listen to
Yeah.
music. But there is the sound of analog, there is the sound of vinyl that, if it's done well and it's not heavily compressed and
Right.
it's, the stars are aligned, it's a great experience. And even if it doesn't sound perfect, it's still that, it's that connection with a product, with
Sure.
that thing. And behind me, a lot of what I have behind me has been with me almost as long as I've been alive. I mean, I've been collecting
Wow.
records from day one and taking care of them. I
Right.
sold off way too many of them years ago, which is a story from when we're off camera and on a martini.
Right.
But I
Yes.
still have uh, about 2,000, I'd say. And my mantra now is not just to buy for the sake of buying; it's buying things that I care about. because I want to play the music, or the packaging is just too cool to put down.
Yeah, right.
But there is that appeal to it that I don't think you get with other formats. Maybe reel to reel on a much higher end level, but that's always been a specialty market. Whereas vinyl, that's how people just access music, and that's why there's so much of it out there.
Right. Let me ask you this question. I feel like, and I could be wrong. I don't think that I'm wrong, but I could be wrong in this case. At some point in time, because what people look at being audiophile and high-end audio components, at one point in time, were neither of those things. They were literally the only way to consume music. Either it was that, listen to the radio, or go to the concert hall. The end. You didn't have these choices. So at what point in time do you feel like there was this demarcation where things split and people went, okay, just regular music listener and high end, like what, or like audiophile lifestyle, right? Like, was that something that was fast tracked? Did it happen over time? And in your experience, like, was there a singular moment you woke up and you went, oh man, there's two markets now? Or was it sort of gradually over time that it happened until we arrived here?
Well, honestly, I think it was there from almost the beginning. Once the LP was introduced, LPs and 45s, but mainly the LP, where you could now get better sound, there was a difference. And there are people who are buying albums, are they going to play it on a phonograph, or not really think about it? Right. And there are others who noticed the difference or cared about the difference and started building upon that. I think it's been there, 50s, 60s. It's just that there was a period where, it really took a sharp fork in the road. And that was the period when I think cassettes really moved in and took over. I was managing a record store way back when, contrary to popular belief, I'm not 23. And cassettes, were outselling vinyl 3-1.
Wow.
Especially for new releases. Nobody came in for a new release looking for vinyl, except it was even like, sort of an oddball format, because they weren't audiophiles and they just wanted the cassette because you could play it at home, in the car, everywhere else. Cassette, it's fragile to say the least, but that's what they wanted. And vinyl went away for a period.
Which is weird, because I remember saving a lot of unsharpened pencils from my cassettes to try to right. Everybody who was in the 80s, we were all twisting them or jamming our pinkies in there, trying to rewind anything that would come out, and like just hoping that we wouldn't twist the actual tape inside and go, oh man, I got to go buy another one. So this is all fascinating to me, because I just figured that at some point it went from being, this is how we listen to music, in the sense that like audiophile, I feel like, and I've heard different positions on this. I have audiophile friends who are quite a bit older than I am, who are, grandparents, and they said, no, well, when we were growing up, there was really no such thing as audiophile. You would go to the local, ride your bike to the local stereo store and hang out, and you just listen to music, and that's where you listen to music, and you found out cool stuff, and that's that. And then there were other people that were like, yes, that's true, but those kids were riffraff, and I would go in looking for a very particular thing, and I saw it in the magazine, and I had to have it at my house, right? So that seems, excuse you, Victoria, that seems like more of a, I don't want to say socioeconomic, but it seems more of a class thing than a tech thing. Does that make sense?
Sure. And I was one of the riffraff. Like I was saying earlier, I would take my records to the store, and I was interested in it, but I didn't walk out quoting model numbers. I was just walking out, saying, wow, it's just the aspiration was, being created around that time, but I wasn't a gearhead yet. And to some extent, I'm not even now. I mean, there are friends of mine who look at me like I have something wrong because I can, like, they'll ask me about things. I'll come out with model numbers. And then I have friends in the industry who can just break it down and just know everything about almost anything that came out, and right. I like talking to them both, but it's, I think there was a period where the stores and the market itself was just more inviting. So
Right.
that's really what it comes down to. So call it whatever you want. People felt welcome. Whereas again, if you're going to have to make an appointment to go into a hi-fi store, you're
Right.
not welcome. You have to prove your worth by calling them and saying, okay, I'd like to come in at 3 o'clock to look at preamps.
Right.
I have to sort of know what I'm talking about before I approach that door or
Right.
learn about it somewhere else. And
Right.
as important as it is, by the way, having all these great venues and outlets online, you're not going to sample hi-fi in front of your desktop system.
Unless your desktop system is surround and awesome. And the computer is the least
I have a
the
good
least
one.
tiny thing.
I have a stupid amount of equipment looking back at me right
Right.
now,
Yeah, I'm
but
sure.
it's still not the same as trying out, a
Yeah,
turntable. I
of
have a
course.
turntable wired into it, but it's not going to be
Mhm.
the same as what I have in the living room. Or
Mhm.
if somebody's demoing a system over stream, for example,
Right.
you're not going to get the nuance. You're not going to get that feel. I mean, but again, I like listening to music anywhere. I listen to it in the car on terrestrial radio because some of my
Mhm.
favorite stations are still there. It's not
Right.
like lower end or lower quality is bad. It's just different. And I think
Right.
audiophiles like to get it everywhere and the best possible, but we just like to have it around us. We like to have the music. The gear is always interesting, but it's what you're listening to. That's really what it
Sure.
comes back to all the time.
Sure.
I'm a big Beatles fan, like a
Mhm.
few other people in the world, and I think one of the reasons why the music has persisted, aside from the fact that it's just so good, is
Mhm.
it was recorded well.
Yeah.
And they keep updating it a bit, but at the time, they always had the best recording processes for the moment. And that really has stood out. I think it's one of the reasons why we talk about it today. Same thing with Frank Sinatra's
Oh,
50s
yes.
recordings,
Oh,
a lot of
yes.
the jazz recordings on Blue Note. They're really good to begin with, so they can get a good spiff up, for different series that come out, and there'll be the anniversary reissues. I have a lot of original albums, prints from those eras that sound fantastic. It's
Yeah.
it's as good as you can get. And I think it's because it started in the studio. The producer, the engineers knew what they were doing, the musicians, and they created something that was big and beautiful as opposed to something compressed and meant to have a short shelf life.
Mhm. Right. Tell us, since you say you're not the biggest gearhead, but now I'm gonna ask it anyway.
Well, I'm not.
Tell us
Yeah.
about your systems. You've got your whole
It's all
apartment is
crossly. No,
packed and
no.
Bose. Nothing but C&D. That's all there is. Yeah. Right.
Let's see. I would say I live in an apartment in Brooklyn. I'm setting the scene here, so it's not a big palatial space. So I used to do quite a bit of work with a company called Emotiva,
Mhm.
and I still have a lot of their electronics in my system. So my turntable is a Project Carbon Esprit. Big fan of Project. Check them out if you're in the market for a good, affordable turntable. Uh, Not take anything away from the other brands. And then I have Emotiva Pre-Pro and 5-channel amplifier, uh, 8-inch NHT subwoofer, NHT C4 towers and C3, and NHT Verve 3-ways in the back. I don't know if you're familiar with NHT. They were really, really big, and the product is still out there. And it's one of my favorite, like, high mid-fi companies or mid-hi-fi companies, however you want to look at it.
Sure.
But it's, those speakers are timeless. And if you
Nice.
mention the Super Zero or the Super One to a certain group of people, they become very wistful about it. And then pretty much every room in the apartment has its own system.
Mhm.
So, I have a nice 2.1 in my bedroom with April Music Aura Note. We
Oh, nice.
have, Amazon-based system in the kitchen going through a Polk sound bar. I'm drawing a blank on the exact model.
Mhm.
So it's just the idea of having it around all the time. But in terms of like the gear right now, I've intentionally kept it accessible and easy to manage.
That's I'm wondering, does your having grown up in New York and have only moved out 6-7 years ago. Is it a walk up, or is it an elevator building?
No, it's I live on the 4th floor of an elevator
Okay,
building.
all right.
It's 6-story building. I walk up the 4 floors. No. It's a nice apartment. I've had this one for about 7 years now.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Just
it's
I can
good.
only picture people having to push hi-fi gear upstairs.
Yeah.
It's not fun. It's not
No,
fun
and I
at all.
arrange reviews for a lot of people, and I feel terrible when there's an amplifier showing up that's as heavy as a car, and
Right.
they have to walk it up 4 flights.
That's why they should review headphones and
Yeah,
adapters only. If you live in a
you're
walk-up, you are
thinking.
cursed to be portable personal audio reviewers only. Ground floor people can review heavy stuff. The end.
Yeah, and as you know, I mean, portable audio now, it's no
I know.
sacrifice in
Yeah.
sound. It used to be, compromised, let's say. There are
Mm,
always like really high-end products, but kind
sure.
of scary things, or something that was a studio
Right.
headphone that you could then take and adapt for something else.
Yeah.
But there are great headphones out there now at a variety of prices and comfort levels. Yeah, there you go. You see, I'm not even going into like my clients there, but Hi-Fi Man, for example, wherever fine
Yeah.
headphones are sold.
Yes.
But it's true that there's a lot of stuff, and even a brand like Hi-Fi Man, for example, will have a wide range of products.
Yeah.
So you have 150 at one end, you have 6,000 at another. The
Right.
one at 6,000 takes more power. It's much more serious listening, for lack of a
Mm.
better term. Uh, but you want music with you wherever you go, and I think it just sounds
Sure.
great. And
Well,
that's
yeah.
what.
I mean, these are the Edition XS, and then I've got the Arias here. Wait,
Mhm.
this way. Okay, there we go for everybody to see. And y'all know me. Y'all know that I am the prophet of the closed back headphone. Y'all know this about me, and yet here I am. I can't figure out which way to turn.
Mm.
And I mean, the Edition XS are there's nothing wrong with them. They're lovely. They're super nice. You put
Oh
these
yeah,
on.
I love open back models myself because they tend to be, to my ears, a little more open and transparent, more
Mm,
neutral. It's a matter of taste. I certainly
yeah.
have a number of closed back models. I
I
have
have my
a
Sennheiser
headphone
closed.
tree.
I have them
There you
like
go.
sitting jealously looking, like, when's it my turn?
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
can't
Oh no,
turn
man.
them
And
yet.
my son has the Sony 1000, I think, is
Okay.
the model that he just got. No, I get it. But I got used to listening to the Hi-Fi Man models, especially the Sundara and the Deva,
Mhm. Okay.
Deva Pro with Bluetooth, and just it sounds good. I forget that I'm wearing a headphone, which to me is always the goal. It's just as much as I'm interested in the gear, no matter what it
Mhm.
is, after a while, I want it to just fade away and be about the music.
See, that's very interesting because for me, psychologically, when I put on, especially the Arias, when I put them on, at first I was like, "What is this square thing that's on my head?" Because they're big. I mean, they're big, they're
Yeah, yeah,
substantial, and they're good
no
that way.
denying it. Yes.
Yeah, but then you're right. It About 5 minutes later, I was like, "Where did it go? Where is it?" And
Mhm.
I'm so used to having, for me, I think closed back I've been a closed back person because I work in them, right, in the studio and in my composer suite, and putting on headphones signifies a separation between me and whatever else is going on. That's I'm focused on this thing, and so to have them disappear was like emotionally deeply unsettling at first, honestly,
Yeah.
because I didn't under it was like floating on air. I didn't understand what was going on, right? And I was like, "What? I have to feel it in order to sort of be focused on it." And then after a while it was like, "No, it's all kind of here. It's all kind of here." And I thought, "Wow, that's really okay. Okay, it's time to branch out." So yeah, I think there's a lot of new stuff in personal and portable audio that's just incredible. It's just now I see now what's happened though, Adam, is Hi-Fi Man has given me cause to buy another purse because now I'm going to need a purse just for headphones. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
okay with that. I'm totally fine buying
You
another
should get a
purse.
large backpack so you can have several models with you at a time. So you just pick whatever's right for the moment.
I Yes, and I can have my barbecue tools in there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why. I feel like that's, or my mixology stuff. That's really, really important. Absolutely. No, I think they're great. And I've been, Hi-Fi Man is not sponsoring this happy hour or
No,
anything like that.
yeah. I
Not at
don't get
all.
any
Not at all.
kickbacks because I mentioned their
Right.
name. Nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
No. We said Bose and Crosley too, so we're good.
Yeah.
We're good. But I was really surprised at because I had one really bad, my open back headphone experience was like my experience with pho, right, with the Vietnamese dish pho. I had a
Mhm.
really bad experience with it once to the point where it turned me off and I just never went back. And my first open back headphone experience was so terrible, I just didn't do it.
Scarred.
No, literally scarred. I will not mention the name of the headphones. I'll just say that they were moist. And headphones should never,
No.
ladies, gentlemen, and friends, never be moist. If you put on headphones and they're moist, call your doctor immediately.
That means the guy at UPS tried them on first, and it was a hot, sweaty day in the warehouse. So yeah,
it's
Yeah.
gross. It's gross.
Quick,
So
while the
I
warranty is
never
still
wore
good.
them.
Send
Yeah,
it back.
right. So honestly, these are probably like Hi-Fi Man is probably the first pairs. Hi-Fi Men. What is the plural of Hi-Fi Man? Men.
Hi-Fi Man headphones.
Hi-Fi Man headphones. So the headphones are plural. Okay.
Yeah.
They're the first open back headphones that I have legitimately worn for more than 5 minutes at a show, trying, like Can Jam or whatever, trying them on. And this is the first time that I'm able to re-experience them, and they're not moist.
They're not. No.
They're not.
I think that used to be the tagline, not moist.
Oh, which reminds me, I do have to ask you this about.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
About Hi-Fi Man. Okay. No. Wait.
No, it's okay.
I'm just curious. This gentleman here, is that inspired by you?
No. No, look at that hair. No, that's
Adam Sohmer.
That's
What's going on here?
Yeah,
No,
that's me in 1987.
I just saw that and I thought, after all the times that I've sort of witched and moaned about, people using women as models and this, that, and the other, they put like beardy sunglass man in there, and I went, all right, I can get on board with this. We're good.
No. Do you ever watch South Park?
Yeah, of course.
It reminds me of PC Principal, that character. There you go.
Oh gosh. And on that note, I would like to say thank you to Adam Sohmer of Sohmer Associates for being our guest this evening on Hi-Fi Happy Hour. I don't know how we ended up on South Park and headphone moisture, but we did.
All roads lead to South Park. It's okay.
They do. It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Which is a great plug for our the show, Denver, in the autumn of 2022.
There
everybody.
You go.
So, Adam, thank you so much. I know you and I are going to be doing some other cool stuff that's going to be coming out later. I'm not going to say what. I'm just going to say later. So everybody, watch out! It's going to be so awesome.
Later. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope this wasn't too weird.
No, not at all. I'm hanging out at home drinking coffee. It's great.
You're drinking coffee being observed by people.
Yeah, I'm used to it.
Okay, good.
Just like you are. It goes with the job, and I'm fine with it.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you, Adam, for coming on and spending time with us, and for all of your insight and your experience, and for everything that you do for our industry and our community. We're very appreciative to you. Go check out Sohmer Associates if you haven't already. Now, I know your not your Facebook page, your Instagram was private, no?
Well, just
I don't want to send people to you.
And that's because I was getting a lot of trolls and spam for a while, so it's just easier. If you're real, I let you in, and it's just I do the same thing with Facebook, just because it got out of hand after a while.
Sure.
So a lot of people have time to kill out there. It's kind of scary.
They do. It's true.
Yeah. So. But no, absolutely. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. If anybody will be at Expona, look for me. I'll be there. And otherwise, yeah, just keep the faith, keep the interest in the business. And even if you're not buying right now, take a look around.
Yeah,
Go out and hear
absolutely.
music every chance you get.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. I'm not going to tell you who the guest is for next week because I may or may not have a guest, not because of anything other than next week is the announcement of the winner of the SBS Prime system giveaway that we've been doing. So if you entered that, you must be present during Hi-Fi Happy Hour, because if I read out your name and you don't answer, you won for like 2 seconds, then I'm moving on to the next person. You must be present. So if you entered or you had your friends entered, you better tell them to show up here next week, 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the winner will be read out and then contacted by SVS directly for shipping information, yada, yada, yada. It'll be fun.
Yes.
It'll be fun, I think. So anyway, thank you everybody so much for tuning in. As usual, keep rocking, and Woodwax Gang represent. That's the thing in the Hi-Fi Instagram community. There's this thing called WWG. Are you aware of this, Adam Sohmer?
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay, good. Woodwax Gang. It's absolutely where the top pinnacle players are, apparently. So anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.